it's now October, which means the days are getting shorter, it's getting cold, the leaves are starting to yellow, and it's time for some nice autumnal reads to get into the autumn mood. So I procrastinated a little bit on making this video, so I'm already halfway through my autumn TBR. So half of this video is going to be me telling you what books I've already read, and then the second half are going to be the books that I'm excited to read in the rest of autumn. I don't know how long they're going to take me. So I've got 3 that I've already read and 3 to read, and then we'll see. I think it should take me definitely into November, and I think November, the end of November, definitely is more winter than autumn. So let's get into it. So the first book I read in autumn was Good Omens by, who is it by? Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. I watched the series first, and then after finishing the second season I needed more, so I ended up reading the book. So Good Omens follows an angel Aziraphale and a demon Crowley as the apocalypse starts, and it follows them working together to try and avoid the end of days. And you get a lot of different characters. You have the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, you have witch finders, you have the, what's he called? The demon child. What is he called? Oh, the Antichrist. And then you have the Antichrist and his friends. So it's really fun. I think I preferred watching it. This might be controversial, I don't know. But I definitely prefer the series over the book. I think because there's just more, you get more of Aziraphale and Crowley, you get more of their relationship, you get flashbacks, and those flashbacks aren't in the book, which because the book follows the series so closely, I assumed they were in the book, but they weren't. And I was wanting just more Aziraphale and Crowley, because that's sort of the whole reason that you watch Good Omens. But I really love the second season. I prefer the first season to the second season, but it was still so good. But yeah, in terms of the book, I liked it because it was similar to the series. Had I read the book first, maybe I would have enjoyed it more because I wouldn't know what's coming. Because I think when you read the book of a series when it follows it so closely, you know everything. So you can then imagine it in your head, but then I don't know, I was sort of conflicted about Good Omens because I liked it, but I think the series is so good, and I think the series expands on the book, and I think the series is such a good example of good book to screen adaptation. Although the book still stands on its own as a good read. So I would definitely recommend reading it if you haven't already, and I would definitely recommend the TV show if you haven't already. And the next book that I read was God Killer. So this book, I picked it up mostly because of the cover, because that cover is so cool, and I thought that it just screams autumn. I think it's the brown and the deer. Are there leaves? Oh, yeah, there's leaves and roots. It just feels like autumn. So I didn't know that much about it before I picked it up. Let me just get out the summary to help me describe it to you. God Killer is set in a world where gods are real, and there's lots of different kind of gods for lots of different things, and there's just been a god war. So there was humans against gods, basically, and it's sort of in the aftermath of that. And we follow 3 main characters, technically 4 main characters. So you have Kissen, who is a god killer. She's really interesting. I really loved her character. And you have, what was her name? Her name isn't in the thing. And then you have a young noble, and who is connected to a god, and there's sort of a mystery around how they're connected and why they're connected. And I really loved their relationship. I loved all the character relationships in this book were the best thing about it. It was so good. And then you also have, what was his name? Oh no. Let me just skip back in the book to try and find, what was his name? Oh, Elo. Elo is a baker that used to be a knight, and he is called on this quest. So I'm explaining this really badly. Okay, so we follow 4 main characters on an adventure. They go on a quest, and it's just really good. I really enjoyed this one. I don't know if it had autumnal vibes per se. I'm not quite sure when it's set in terms of season, but it definitely had a lot of nature because you had a lot of travelling. It's the first book in a series, so there's a sequel coming, and it does very much feel like it's setting up a second book, because I got to about 90% on my Kindle and nothing was wrapping up, and it was only getting worse and worse. And so you're sort of sitting there thinking, oh, this is not a standalone as I had thought, and there's another one. But I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely be picking up the second one when it comes out, which I think is in a while. And yeah, no, I really enjoyed Good Killer. A lot of these books I enjoyed. I haven't read a bad book, I think, this autumn. So the third book I read this autumn was Nettle and Bone. So Nettle and Bone follows a princess who is also sort of a nun. She's been raised, or she went to live in a nunnery while her sisters were married one after the other to the prince of a neighbouring kingdom. And the main character decides that she's going to kill the prince that her sisters were married to. And so she goes on this adventure and she meets different, I think there's four and a half characters that she meets along the way to help her on this quest. And again, it was really good fun. The characters were really interesting and well-rounded. I really loved the journey and the different places they went to. All the locations seemed very real. And also a lot of the side characters, even when they weren't in there for very long, they still felt very real and very rounded. So yeah, it was definitely a good book. And this was a standalone. So this was by T. Kingfisher, I think, which is the first, let me just double check. And this is the first T. Kingfisher book I've read, but I definitely think I should read more because I really enjoyed this. Yeah, it was like it had strong fairy tale vibes, and she was like, the main character throughout was saying, oh, it's like a fairy tale, or if this was a fairy tale, it wouldn't be going like this. And I thought that was really fun, and it was just really good. The world building was really good. The magic, we didn't really find out much about the magic system. It definitely felt kind of like a fairy tale in that magic is there, but it's never explained. But I didn't mind that. I quite liked just being along for the ride. And yeah, it was really enjoyable, really fun. I would definitely recommend Nettle and Bone. It also, the main reason that I read the book was because there was a chicken possessed by a demon, and it says it on the blurb, and that was it. I was like, if there's a chicken possessed by a demon, I've got to read it. So that book I've just finished, so we're going to go ahead with the books that are coming up that I'm going to be reading this autumn. So the first one that I'm just getting started with is Legendborn. This one doesn't really have autumnal vibes. I've known about it for a really long time, but I've never picked it up. I think someone on Bookstagram recommended it. Carrie Can Read definitely loves it because I've seen her videos on it and not watched them because I didn't want to spoil myself because I wanted to read it. But someone mentioned it in a video, I can't remember who, and I thought, I'll just check to see how much it is if I got it on my Kindle, and it was really cheap. I think it was either £1 or £2, so I got it, and I'm really excited to read it. So I can't tell you what it's about because I haven't read it yet, but let me have a look at the description. So I know I think there's two. I don't know if there's a third one. But I know that there's a series, so it's not a standalone. So this, I think, is set in present day, I think, and I haven't really checked what it's about. So I might just read you the description because I have not prepared at all for this video. After her mother dies in an accident, 16-year-old Bree Matthews wants to escape. A residential program for bright high schoolers seems like the perfect opportunity, until she witnesses a magical attack her very night on campus. I don't really know much about it. I only know that it's been recommended. There's nothing autumnal about it, but I'm just in the mood for a fun YA fantasy. And most of the fantasies I read are set in another world, so I'm quite excited to read one that is set in our world, and you don't have to go into it with all these different technical terms and world building, and you can just sort of go along for the ride. So I'm excited for Legendborn. And the next two books I'm going to read are both physical books. So the first one is Babel? I don't know, by R.F. Kuang. I've actually had this for a year. I think I got it for Christmas, and I haven't got around to reading it yet, but I've decided it's time. But it feels like an autumnal read. It feels like something that you should read on like a dark, cozy night. I'm slightly afraid because I know some spoilers, and I know that it's going to be quite hard-hitting and quite hard to get through, which is why I read the first, I think I read the first chapter, and then I put it down and I read One True Love by Taylor Jenkins Reid instead, because I was in the mood for something a bit more light. So yeah, I'm excited to have a go at Babel again, and I'm going to try and do a reading vlog for Babel, so that will be coming up soon, hopefully, when I get around to reading it. So if you don't know, if you haven't heard of Babel, it's set in Oxford, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to read it. It's dark academia. I don't know much about it, other than there's a magic, and the magic is to do with language and translation. I think I could read the blurb, but it doesn't tell you very much. So Babel is a college or an institute within the Oxford University about translation, which is where the magic comes from. And the main character goes there, and bad things happen, I guess. So that'd be fun. So excited for this. And then the final book that I'm going to read in autumn, hopefully if I get round to it, is Rebecca by Daphne, how do you pronounce it? Daphne du Maurier? Her. So yeah, I'm excited for Rebecca. I've had this for a while. I think I've had this probably for at least 2 years, just sitting on my shelf, and I haven't got round to it yet, but I've decided it's time. It's a really lovely book, but I don't have a dust cover or anything on it. I got it secondhand, and I'm really excited. I've seen the film on Netflix, and I've listened to some of the songs from the musical, which might be really obscure, but I'm really excited. So if you haven't heard of Rebecca before, it's a gothic, is it mystery? So Rebecca is about an unnamed woman who marries an older man, and when he takes her to his big house, Manderley, she finds that there's a lot of his late wife still in the house, and I don't think it's necessarily haunted by her, but her presence is definitely still ingrained in this house, and she's got to sort of prove herself, and there's a housekeeper who doesn't want Rebecca to be replaced. Rebecca is the name of the wife who died. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for the gothic of it all. I'm excited. I know what happens, but I'm excited for the language as well. The writing of the book is so good. I read the first page and I was just amazed by the writing, so I'm so excited to get around to this. So those are all the books that I have read and will be reading this autumn. So thank you if you're still here. Let me know what books you're going to be reading this autumn, and if you've read any that are on my list, let me know your thoughts. And happy autumn, and I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your day, and goodbye.